I got uninvited from Christmas by my own parents, not because I did something wrong, but because I built something they couldn't control. The text came 2 weeks before the holidays. Family only this year. We don't want awkward questions about your situation. My situation. I'm a founder. I'm on magazine covers. I employ 63 people. But my sister married into money, and suddenly I'm the embarrassment they need to hide. Here's the thing they didn't know. The in-laws they were protecting their image for? I was about to sign a multi-million-dollar deal with them. And they had no idea who I was. If you're interested in this topic, hit the like button, subscribe, and type "interested" in the comments. And I will give you a heart. I need you to understand something right now. My parents didn't betray me because they hated me. They betrayed me because they loved my sister more. And that's somehow worse. Because hate you can fight. Hate gives you a clear enemy. But favoritism? Favoritism is slow poison. It's 1,000 tiny cuts disguised as fairness. It's being told you're loved equally while watching them prove, over and over, that you're not. My name is Nora Mercer, and I spent my entire life being the daughter they were proud of in private and embarrassed by in public. My sister Vivian? She was their masterpiece. Polished, poised, married well, said the right things at the right times. I was the one who worked too much, cared too little about appearances, and refused to perform for their approval. And for years, I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I didn't need their validation because I had my own success, my own company, my own identity separate from their expectations. I was wrong. It mattered. It always mattered. You don't realize how much you're still waiting for your parents to choose you until the moment they explicitly choose someone else. The text arrived on a Friday afternoon while I was in the middle of finalizing a partnership that would expand my company into 3 new markets. I was on top of the world professionally. My business was growing. My team was sharp. Everything I'd built from nothing was finally paying off in ways that couldn't be ignored. And then my phone buzzed. Mom's name. I almost didn't open it because I was busy, but something made me pause. Maybe instinct. Maybe I already knew. The message was short, efficient, cold in that way parents get when they've made a decision they don't want to defend. Nora, Christmas this year is family only. Vivian's in-laws are coming. The Caldwells are executives, boardroom people. We think it's better if you sit this one out. Don't want awkward questions about your situation. You understand. I read it twice. Then I read it again, because surely I'd misunderstood. Surely my own mother wasn't uninviting me from Christmas. Surely she wasn't calling me a liability in front of my sister's rich in-laws. But no, that's exactly what she was doing. And the worst part, the absolute gut punch of it, she phrased it like I'd agree, like I'd understand, like I'd nod along and accept that my presence was too complicated, too messy, too much of a risk to their precious image. I typed back one word, okay. Not because I agreed, not because I understood, but because I knew if I said what I actually felt, it would turn into a fight I didn't have the energy for. And here's what nobody tells you about family betrayal. It doesn't come with screaming matches or slammed doors. It comes with polite texts and reasonable explanations. It comes with your mother suggesting you're the problem without ever saying it directly. It comes with being erased from your own family's holiday because your success doesn't fit their narrative. I sat there, staring at my phone, feeling something crack inside my chest that I didn't know how to name. Anger? Sure. Hurt? Definitely. But deeper than that was this overwhelming sense of clarity. My parents had always treated Vivian like she was fragile, like she needed protection. And they'd always treated me like I was strong, like I didn't need anything from them. But strength isn't the same as not needing love. And independence isn't the same as not deserving a seat at the table. My chief strategy officer, Evan Rios, noticed the shift immediately. He's worked with me long enough to read my breathing patterns, to know when something's wrong even when I'm keeping my face neutral. "Bad news?" he asked, not pushing, just offering space. "Family," I said, and slid the phone away like it was contaminated. "Where are we with the Caldwell Group due diligence?" I changed the subject because that's what I do. I compartmentalize. I move forward. I don't let personal pain interfere with professional execution. Evan didn't push. He pulled up the file. Final meeting Monday. They want a facility tour, your presentation, full integration plans. Their CEO, Malcolm Caldwell, is coming in person. The name hit me like a freight train. Malcolm Caldwell. I knew that name, not from business reports or industry gossip, but from something far more personal. "Does Malcolm have a son named Graham?" I asked, keeping my voice carefully even. Evan frowned, typed something, then looked up fast. "Yes. Recently married." "Why?" "Because," I said, and I felt something shift in my spine, something that felt like fate clicking into place. "He married my sister Vivian. And my parents just uninvited me from Christmas, so the Caldwells won't ask awkward questions about me." The silence in that room was deafening. Evan stared at me like I'd just told him we were living inside a simulation, which honestly felt accurate. What are the odds? What are the actual statistical odds that the family my parents are bending over backward to impress is the same family I'm about to sign a multi-million-dollar deal with? "So what's the move?" Evan finally asked, and I loved him for not asking if I was okay, for not offering sympathy I didn't want. He asked the only question that mattered: what happens next? I leaned back in my chair and felt something cold and clear settle over me. Not revenge. I want to be very clear about this. What I felt wasn't some petty desire for revenge. It was something far more precise. It was the realization that I had an opportunity to show my parents exactly who they'd dismissed. To show the Caldwells exactly who they'd never bothered to notice. To prove that the daughter deemed too complicated for Christmas was the same person they were about to trust with their entire supply chain infrastructure. "We run Monday by the book," I said. "If they recognize me, they recognize me. If they don't, we sign a deal with people who never realized they'd already judged me without knowing who I was." Evan's mouth twitched. "That's ruthless." "That's precise," I corrected, pulling up our presentation deck. "Now help me make it impossible for them to say no. Because here's the thing about being underestimated by your own family, it teaches you to be excellent. It teaches you that your work has to speak louder than their doubts. It teaches you that the only approval that matters is the approval you give yourself." My parents thought they were protecting Vivian's marriage, protecting their image, protecting themselves from awkward questions. But what they actually did was hand me the perfect stage to prove everything they'd never believed about me. And I was going to take that stage and own it completely. That weekend, I didn't cry. I didn't call them back. I didn't explain or defend or beg to be included. I worked. I refined every slide, rehearsed every transition, stress-tested every projection. Serena, our CTO, ran the demo 47 times until it was flawless. Priya organized signature packets with military precision. Evan built contingency arguments for every possible objection. We prepared like we were going to war. Because, in a way, we were. And the entire time, I kept thinking about that text message. About the casual cruelty of it. About how my mother had reduced my entire existence to your situation, like I was a problem to be managed instead of a daughter to be loved. About how my father hadn't even bothered to text himself, just let mom deliver the blow. About how Vivian probably didn't even know, or worse, knew and agreed. Family loyalty is supposed to be unconditional, right? That's what we're told growing up. Blood is thicker than water. Family comes first. Never turn your back on your own. But nobody tells you what to do when your family turns their back on you first. Nobody prepares you for the moment when you realize that the people who are supposed to love you most are actually the ones holding you back, hiding you, treating you like a secret they're ashamed of. So I made a decision that weekend. If they wanted to treat me like I didn't belong at their table, fine. I'd build my own table. I'd build it so well, so successfully, so undeniably that they'd have to see it. That everyone would have to see it. Monday morning, I dressed for battle. Charcoal suit, ivory blouse, hair pinned back in the way that says I'm in control even when I'm not. I stood in my office, looking at the framed magazine cover on the wall, my face, my name, my company, and I thought about how my parents had never hung it in their house. How they'd never mentioned it to their friends. How my success was only valuable to them when it didn't complicate Vivian's story. But the Caldwells were about to walk into my building, into my conference room, into the empire I'd built without my family's help, and they had absolutely no idea that the daughter my parents hid from them was the CEO they were here to meet. What happened next wasn't revenge. It was reckoning. Monday morning arrived with a kind of clarity that only comes when you've spent an entire weekend preparing for a moment you didn't choose but absolutely intend to own. I woke up at 5, not because I needed the extra time, but because sleep felt like surrender. I ran through the presentation in my head while the coffee brewed, tested rebuttals in the shower, rehearsed my opening handshake in the mirror. Every detail mattered. Every word had to land exactly right. Because this wasn't just a business meeting anymore. This was the moment where my parents' worst fear, awkward questions about my situation, was about to become their most embarrassing reality. And I was going to be the one controlling the narrative. I arrived at the office before anyone else, walked through the lobby where that magazine cover waited at eye level like a silent witness, and felt something settle in my chest. This was my territory. My building. My rules. They were walking into my world, and they didn't even know it yet. By 9:30, the conference room was perfect. Evan had the presentation deck cued to the opening slide. Clean, professional, undeniable. Serena had the live demo running on backup servers in case anything glitched. Priya had arranged signature packets at each seat with the precision of someone who understood that details communicate competence. The room smelled like fresh coffee and the kind of leather chairs that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Everything screamed success. Everything said we belonged in the same conversation as the Caldwell Empire. And I stood at the head of that table, looking out at the city below, thinking about how my parents had literally uninvited me from Christmas to avoid this exact family meeting these exact people. The irony was so sharp it could draw blood. At 9:45, our receptionist called up. "Ms. Mercer, the Caldwell delegation is here." My heart kicked once, hard, against my ribs, then went quiet. "Send them up," I said, and my voice didn't shake. That felt like the first victory. They came in like royalty inspecting a potential acquisition, which I suppose is exactly what they were doing. Graham Caldwell entered first, and I recognized him immediately even though we'd never actually spoken. He was my sister's husband. The man she'd chosen. Handsome in that practiced, careful way that comes from a lifetime of family money and good genetics and never having to prove himself to anyone. He wore confidence like a birthright, and I understood instantly why my parents loved him. He was everything they'd wanted me to marry instead of becoming. Behind him came Celeste Caldwell, his mother, dripping in pearls that looked inherited and a smile that looked manufactured. She had the kind of face that had been beautiful once and was now preserved through expensive maintenance and sheer force of will. Two senior executives followed, carrying leather portfolios and the weary expressions of people who attend too many meetings. And then Malcolm Caldwell himself. CEO. Patriarch. The man my parents were so desperate to impress that they'd erased their own daughter from the family Christmas card. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone who'd spent decades making decisions that shaped industries, someone who expected doors to open before he reached them, someone who'd probably never been told no by anyone who mattered. None of them recognized me. Not one. And why would they? At Vivian's wedding 8 months ago, I'd been a blur in the back row during the ceremony, seated with distant cousins and college friends my sister barely remembered. I'd worn a dress my mother picked out, beige, forgettable, designed to blend into wallpaper. I'd smiled for the family photos they took without me. I'd left before the speeches started because I had a product launch the next morning and nobody noticed I was gone. Vivian never introduced me to Graham's family. Never said, "This is my sister, she runs a supply chain tech company." Never gave them my name. I was just another guest, another blurred face in the wedding album, another person who didn't matter enough to remember. But they were about to remember me now. "Mr. Caldwell," I said, and stepped forward with my hand extended. Professional. Warm. Giving nothing away. "Welcome. I'm Nora Mercer, founder and CEO. Thank you for making the trip." His handshake was firm, practiced, the kind politicians spend years perfecting. "Ms. Mercer," he said, and his voice had that boardroom smoothness that comes from decades of negotiations. "We've heard impressive things about what you've built here." "We try to be worth the noise," I replied, gesturing toward the conference table. "Please, sit." They arranged themselves like a corporate family portrait. Malcolm at the center, Graham to his right, Celeste to his left, the executives flanking like bodyguards. I took my position at the head of the table, Evan beside me, Serena and Priya positioned strategically. We looked like what we were, a company that knew its value. But I could see Graham watching me with this flickering confusion, like he'd misplaced a memory and couldn't quite locate it. His eyes kept drifting to my face, then away, then back. Trying to solve a puzzle he didn't know existed. The meeting started normally. Evan walked through our market position, our growth trajectory, the 3-year projections that made even conservative investors lean forward. Serena demonstrated our platform's capability to predict supply chain disruptions before they cascaded into disasters. Priya explained our client retention rate, 97%, which in our industry might as well be magic. And through it all, I watched the Caldwells. Watched Malcolm take notes in actual handwriting, old-school power move. Watched Celeste's expression shift from polite interest to genuine attention. Watched the executives whisper to each other, impressed despite themselves. But Graham kept staring at me. And finally, about 20 minutes in, he interrupted Serena mid-sentence. "I'm sorry," he said, and his voice had this edge of confusion that bordered on rudeness. "Have we met before?" The room went still. Evan's pen stopped moving. Serena froze mid-gesture toward the projection screen. Priya's eyes cut to me, sharp and ready. This was it. This was the moment where I could deflect, could say something vague about industry conferences or mutual connections, could keep the meeting professional and separate from the personal disaster my family had created. But I didn't get where I am by deflecting. I got here by being direct, by owning my truth, by refusing to hide even when hiding would be easier. So I looked Graham Caldwell directly in the eyes and said, "Not properly." I let that sit for exactly 2 seconds. Then I added with perfect calm, "I attended your wedding." You could have heard a pin drop in that conference room. The air itself seemed to contract. Malcolm's eyes narrowed, his entire body language shifting from casual interest to sharp focus. Celeste's practiced smile faltered at the edges. The executives looked at each other like they'd walked into the wrong meeting. Graham went pale. Actually pale. Like someone had just told him the ground beneath his chair wasn't solid. "You attended my son's wedding?" Malcolm said slowly, and I could hear his mind working, trying to reconcile the successful CEO in front of him with a random wedding guest he'd never noticed. This was the moment. This was where I could have softened it, eased them into the revelation, made it comfortable. But my parents had uninvited me from Christmas via text message because they thought I was too embarrassing to explain. They'd reduced my entire existence to awkward questions they didn't want to answer. So I decided the Caldwells could have their awkward questions right now, in my conference room, on my terms. I looked directly at Malcolm Caldwell and let the next sentence fall like a gavel. "Yes," I said. "Vivian Mercer is my sister." Silence. The kind of silence that has weight and texture and sharp edges. The kind of silence that changes the molecular structure of a room. Celeste's smile didn't just crack, it shattered completely. Her hand went to her throat like she couldn't breathe. Graham looked like he'd been struck. His mouth opened, closed, opened again without sound. Malcolm's face went through about 17 different expressions in 3 seconds flat. Confusion, recognition, calculation, and something that might have been embarrassment. The executives had the good sense to suddenly become very interested in their portfolios. Evan sat perfectly still beside me, and I could feel his energy, steady and supportive, saying without words, "I've got your back, keep going." So I did. "And before you ask," I continued, my voice level and clear, "my parents uninvited me from Christmas this year because they didn't want awkward questions about my situation when you came to dinner." I let that land. Let them sit with it. Let them understand exactly what they'd walked into. Malcolm's eyes moved past me, toward the lobby, toward that magazine cover with my face on it that they'd walked right past without recognizing. You could see the pieces clicking together in his head. The successful CEO they'd come to evaluate. The invisible wedding guest they'd never noticed. The daughter his future daughter-in-law's parents were ashamed to acknowledge. All the same person. All me. "Your family," Malcolm started, then stopped. "Recalibrated. Your parents don't want you at Christmas." It wasn't a question. It was him repeating the information out loud, trying to make sense of it. "That's correct," I said. And here's where I could have gotten emotional, could have let them see how much it hurt, could have played for sympathy. But sympathy wasn't what I wanted. Respect was what I wanted. So I kept my voice steady and added, "They said they didn't want awkward questions about my situation. They're protecting my sister's marriage to your son." Same instinct, I suppose. Celeste's hands clenched in her lap so hard her knuckles went white. I wondered if she'd known. If Vivian had told Graham's mother about her difficult sister, the one who worked too much and didn't fit the family aesthetic. Or if I'd simply never mattered enough to mention. Graham was staring at the table like it might have answers. His face had gone from pale to flushed, embarrassment and confusion warring for dominance. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. But then I remembered sitting in the back row at his wedding, watching my sister glow while my parents introduced her to everyone who mattered and introduced me to no one. I remembered the text message, the casual cruelty of it, the assumption that I'd simply accept being erased. And I didn't feel bad anymore. Evan's pen was still frozen above his notepad. The entire room was holding its breath, waiting to see what happened next. And I realized I had a choice here. I could let this moment become about the family drama, could let it derail into apologies and explanations and uncomfortable personal revelations. Or I could do what I do best. Take control, redirect, execute. So I reached forward and slid the proposal packet across the table toward Malcolm. The sound of paper on wood was unnaturally loud in the silence. "Now," I said, and my voice cut through the tension like a blade, Do we discuss supply chain infrastructure and integration timelines, or do you need a minute to process what you've just learned about the family you married into? It was a challenge, a dare, a way of saying, you can judge me for being the daughter they hid, or you can judge my company for the work we do. Choose. Malcolm Caldwell stared at me for a long moment, and then, slowly, something shifted in his expression. Not pity. Not sympathy, something closer to respect. Or maybe recognition. The recognition that I just handled an impossibly awkward situation with more grace than anyone in my actual family had shown. He exhaled slowly, then managed a thin smile. So, he said, your parents think they're protecting their image in front of us by excluding you. They're protecting Vivian's marriage, I corrected. Same instinct, different framing. And you're meeting with us anyway, he said, knowing we're the reason you're not going home for Christmas. I'm meeting with you, I replied, because we have a proposal that will save your company $17 million in the first year alone and reduce your supply chain disruption rate by 43%. What my family does or doesn't do with their holidays is separate from whether this partnership makes strategic sense. Malcolm studied me for another moment, then tapped the proposal folder in front of him. All right, he said. Business. Show me how this works at our scale. And just like that, we were back in the game. But everything had changed. They weren't just evaluating my company anymore. They were evaluating me, the daughter deemed too complicated for Christmas, to see if I was really as good as the numbers suggested, or if my own family knew something they didn't. Serena moved to the controls without hesitation, and I loved her for it. No dramatic pause, no waiting for permission, just immediate action that said we weren't here to dwell on personal drama. We were here to prove we were the best at what we did. The lights dimmed. The wall-sized screen flared to life, and our dashboard materialized like something out of a command center. Real-time data streams from ports across 3 continents. Manufacturing plants pulsing with production metrics. Truck routes threading through cities like glowing veins. Weather patterns overlaying everything, color-coded by risk level. Strikes marked in red. Delays flagged in amber. Opportunities highlighted in green. It was beautiful if you understood what you were looking at. And the Caldwells understood. I could see it in their faces. The way Malcolm leaned forward almost imperceptibly. The way the executive's eyes widened, tracking the data flows. Even Celeste looked impressed, though she was clearly still processing the fact that her son had married into a family that treated their accomplished daughter like a liability. But Graham looked like he was having an existential crisis in real time, his eyes moving between the screen and me like he couldn't reconcile the 2 images. Serena walked them through a simulation we'd built specifically for their business model. This is your current supply chain, she said, and the screen showed the Caldwell Group's network, impressive, established, but also rigid in the way legacy systems always are. 47 distribution centers, 236 major suppliers, operating across 18 countries. Annual revenue just north of $3 billion. But here's the problem. She tapped a key, and red began spreading across the map like infection. Last year, you had 17 major disruptions. Port strikes in Rotterdam. Manufacturing delays in Vietnam. Hurricane damage in Houston. Each one cascaded through your system because you're running on reactive protocols instead of predictive ones. You respond to problems after they start instead of rerouting before they hit. Malcolm's jaw tightened. She'd touched a nerve, which meant she'd identified a real pain point. Good. That's what we needed, to make them feel the cost of not working with us. Now watch this, Serena said, and reset the simulation. Same disruptions, same timing, same external factors. But this time, with our system integrated. The red started spreading again, the Rotterdam strike, right on schedule. But before it could cascade, our algorithms kicked in. The screen showed supply routes automatically rerouting around the affected port, orders redistributing to alternative suppliers, inventory shifting between distribution centers to compensate for predicted shortages. The red contained itself, isolated, neutralized before it could metastasize into a company-wide crisis. "Your system saw the strike coming?" one of the executives asked, and I could hear the skepticism fighting with hope in his voice. "3 days before it happened," I said, taking over from Serena. Union negotiations had stalled, social media sentiment among dock workers was trending negative, and historical patterns showed Rotterdam strikes typically occur in Q4 when contract renewals coincide with holiday shipping surges. Our AI doesn't just track what's happening, it tracks what's likely to happen based on 17 different data sources most companies don't think to monitor. Malcolm was making notes again. "Faster now. And the rerouting happens automatically?" "With your approval protocols in place," Evan interjected smoothly. "We're not suggesting you hand over control. We're suggesting you hand over the monitoring and the strategic options. The system presents you with 3 to 5 optimal scenarios ranked by cost, speed, and risk. You make the final call. But you make it with hours or days to prepare instead of minutes to react." Serena advanced to the next simulation, the Vietnam manufacturing delay. Same pattern. Our system predicted it based on supplier communication lag, raw material price fluctuations, and regional weather data. Automatically identified 3 backup manufacturers who could absorb the production gap. Calculated the cost differential. Presented the options before the original manufacturer had even admitted there was a problem. Then the Houston hurricane. This one was easier to predict but harder to manage. The simulation showed our system not just rerouting around the hurricane, that's basic, but prepositioning inventory in strategic locations 3 days before landfall, based on projected storm path and historical recovery timelines for that region. When the hurricane hit, the Caldwell Group's operations in the simulation barely stuttered. Customers got their orders within 24 hours of the original promised delivery window instead of the 3-week delays they'd actually experienced in reality. "That's $17 million in recovered revenue," Priya added, right on cue. "Just from those 3 incidents. And that's conservative math that doesn't account for retained customers who would have switched to competitors after extended delays." The room was silent except for the hum of the projector and Malcolm's pen scratching across paper. I watched their faces instead of the screen because I'd seen this demo 47 times and I could recite it in my sleep. What I needed to see was the moment belief overtook skepticism. The moment they stopped looking for reasons why it wouldn't work and started imagining what it would look like if it did. Malcolm's face was the one I watched most carefully. He had the expression of someone doing rapid mental math, calculating not just the cost savings but the competitive advantage, the market position shift, the quarterly earnings calls where he could announce they'd cut supply chain disruptions by nearly half. But he also kept glancing at me with this look I couldn't quite read. Like he was recalculating something beyond the business proposal. Like he was thinking about the fact that his son's in-laws had literally uninvited me from Christmas while he was preparing to trust me with a critical piece of his company's infrastructure. The cognitive dissonance must have been staggering. How do you reconcile those 2 images? The daughter too problematic for a family dinner. The CEO competent enough to manage billions in supply chain logistics. It doesn't compute. Unless you accept that my parents were catastrophically wrong about me. And people like Malcolm Caldwell don't like admitting they might have missed something important. That they might have walked right past someone significant without noticing. That they might have been in a room with me 8 months ago and deemed me too unimportant to remember my name. When the simulation ended, Serena brought the lights back up slowly, giving their eyes time to adjust and their minds time to process. Malcolm set his pen down with deliberate care. "Walk me through the integration timeline," he said. "How disruptive is implementation?" That was my cue. I pulled up the integration deck, and for the next 20 minutes, we drilled into the technical details. System architecture, API connections, data migration protocols, training timelines for their operations team, phased rollout versus full implementation, contingency plans if something broke during transition. I made sure to be exhaustively thorough because I needed them to see that this wasn't just impressive technology, it was implementable technology. There's a massive difference, and too many tech companies forget it. You can have the most brilliant solution in the world, but if it requires completely rebuilding a client's infrastructure or retraining their entire workforce or disrupting their operations for 6 months, it's worthless. We designed our system to integrate with existing platforms, to work alongside current processes while gradually optimizing them, to be live and functional within 8 weeks instead of 8 months. Malcolm asked sharp questions, the kind that come from decades of experience watching promising partnerships turn into expensive disasters. What happens if your system makes a recommendation that turns out to be wrong? You lose nothing, I said immediately, because you approved the decision. Our system presents options with confidence scores and risk assessments. If you choose the option we ranked as 75% likely to succeed and it fails, you made an informed decision with the best available data. That's better than what you're doing now, which is making gut-feel decisions with incomplete information and hoping for the best. What if your AI has a bias we don't catch until it's cost us money? One of the executives challenged. We run bias audits quarterly, Serena replied. And the system is designed with human oversight at every critical decision point precisely because we know AI isn't infallible. We're not selling you a magic box that runs your company. We're selling you a tool that makes your team smarter, faster, and more proactive. The humans are still in charge. What's your client churn rate? Celeste asked, and I was momentarily surprised she'd engaged with the business discussion instead of just sitting there processing the family drama. 3% annually, Priya answered. And 2 of those 3% were companies that got acquired and their new parent company had existing contracts with competitors. So really, our true churn from dissatisfaction is under 1%. How do you handle data security? Malcolm asked. Because we're not comfortable with our operational data living on some shared cloud server where competitors might theoretically access it. I nodded, appreciating the concern. Private cloud deployment. Your data lives on dedicated servers that only your organization can access. We provide the software and the analysis, but your information never mingles with anyone else's. And we'll put that in the contract with whatever penalty clauses make you comfortable. We went back and forth like this for another 30 minutes. Every question they raised, we had an answer for. Every concern they voiced, we'd already anticipated and solved. This is what separating the weekend to prepare looks like. This is what happens when you take a business meeting seriously instead of treating it like a formality. But underneath the professional exchange, there was this current of unspoken tension. Because we all knew this wasn't just a business meeting anymore. Graham had barely spoken since the revelation. He sat there looking progressively more uncomfortable, like he wanted to disappear into his chair. Celeste kept glancing between me and her son with this expression that was part confusion, part calculation, probably wondering what version of events Vivian had told them about her family. And Malcolm was evaluating me on 2 levels simultaneously. Could I deliver on the business proposal? Yes, clearly. But also, what did it mean that I was competent enough to run this company but somehow problematic enough that my own parents had excluded me from Christmas? What had they missed? What didn't they know? I could see him working through it, trying to reconcile the contradictions. Finally, after we'd exhausted the technical questions and reviewed the financial projections for the 3rd time, Malcolm sat back in his chair. Ms. Mercer, he said, and his tone had shifted into something more formal, more careful. You've built something genuinely impressive here. The technology works, the team is sharp, the financials are solid. On paper, this is exactly what we need. I heard the "but" coming before he said it. But, I prompted, keeping my voice neutral. But I need to understand something, he said, and here it was, the personal question disguised as business due diligence. Your family's dynamic. The fact that they've excluded you. Is there something we should know? Some reason they might have concerns about your judgment or stability that would affect this partnership. The room went cold. Evan's entire body tensed beside me. Serena's hand tightened on her laptop. Priya's expression went from professional to protective in half a second. And I felt something ignite in my chest that was part rage, part vindication, part absolute clarity. Because that's how it works, isn't it? Your family treats you badly, and somehow that becomes evidence that something's wrong with you instead of evidence that something's wrong with them. Your parents exclude you, and people assume you must have done something to deserve it. Because the alternative, that parents can be cruel, that families can be unfair, that you can be rejected for no reason except that you don't fit someone else's preferred narrative, that's too uncomfortable for people to accept. So they look for reasons why you must be the problem. I could have gotten angry, could have let him see how offensive that question was. Could have told him exactly what I thought about the assumption that my family's rejection must indicate some flaw in my character rather than a flaw in theirs. But I didn't, because getting angry would have confirmed his suspicion that something was wrong with me. So instead, I looked Malcolm Caldwell directly in the eyes and said, with perfect, devastating calm, "My family's concerns have nothing to do with my judgment or stability. They have everything to do with the fact that I built this company instead of marrying someone who'd already built theirs. My parents wanted a daughter who enhanced their social status through marriage. I became a daughter who built her own status through work. That's the situation they don't want to explain to you." I let that statement hang in the air, watching Malcolm's expression shift as he realized what he'd just implied, and what I'd just made him confront about his own assumptions. But I wasn't done. Because if we were going to address the uncomfortable truth in the room, we were going to address all of it. And since we're being direct, I continued, let me ask you something, Mr. Caldwell. You were at your son's wedding 8 months ago. So was I. Do you remember me? The question landed like a physical blow. Malcolm's face went through a series of micro-expressions, confusion, then searching, then the slow, uncomfortable realization that he had absolutely no memory of me whatsoever. None. I'd been in the same room with him for 6 hours during his son's wedding, and I'd left zero impression. I was a ghost. Background noise. Completely forgettable. He started, then stopped, because there was no good way to finish that sentence. You don't, I said, not as an accusation but as a statement of fact. Neither does your wife. Neither does Graham, apparently, until about 30 minutes ago. I sat in the back during the ceremony. I wasn't in any of the family photos. I left before the reception speeches. And not one person from your family asked who I was, or what I did, or why Vivian's sister was dressed like someone trying to disappear. The silence in that room was suffocating. Celeste looked like she wanted the floor to open up and swallow her. Graham had his head in his hands. The executives were suddenly fascinated by the ceiling tiles. Evan sat beside me radiating quiet support, and I could feel Serena and Priya's energy behind me, protective and fierce. So when you ask if there's something you should know about why my family excluded me, I continued, my voice still calm, still professional, still completely in control, understand that you're part of the answer. You're the people they're trying to impress. You're the reason I got uninvited from Christmas. Because my parents decided that having me at the dinner table would require them to explain me, and explaining me would be complicated. I leaned forward slightly, holding Malcolm's gaze. They were afraid you'd ask what I do for a living, and they'd have to say I run a tech company. They were afraid you'd ask why I'm not married, and they'd have to admit I prioritized building something over finding someone. They were afraid you'd judge them for having a daughter who doesn't fit the traditional mold of what successful women in their social circle look like. So instead of defending me, instead of being proud of what I've built, they simply erased me from the narrative. Made me disappear. Just like I disappeared at the wedding. Malcolm had the decency to look genuinely uncomfortable now. Ms. Mercer, I'm not looking for an apology. I cut him off, not unkindly but firmly. I'm establishing context. You asked if there's something you should know about my family dynamic that might affect this partnership. Now you know. My family thinks I'm an embarrassment because I built a company instead of marrying into one. They think success looks like my sister, polished, married well, socially appropriate. They think my version of success is too complicated to explain to people like you. I sat back, letting that settle. So yes, there is something you should know. But it's not about my judgment or stability. It's about whether you're the kind of people who judge a CEO's competence based on whether her parents invite her to Christmas. The air in the room felt different now. Heavier. More honest. Malcolm was looking at me with something that might have been respect, or might have been discomfort, or might have been both. It's hard to tell with men who've spent their whole lives being right about everything. But I could see him recalculating, reassessing, trying to square the narrative he'd been handed. Problem daughter, family concerns, awkward situation, with the reality sitting in front of him. A woman who'd built a multi-million-dollar company from scratch, who just delivered a flawless presentation, who was handling an impossible personal situation with more grace than anyone in her actual family had shown. Graham finally looked up from his hands. "Nora," he said, and his voice was rough, like the words were hard to form. "I'm sorry. Vivian she never told me you existed." "Not really. She mentioned a sister once, but she made it sound like you weren't close. Like you'd drifted apart." "We didn't drift," I said quietly. She rose. "I stayed where I was and built something. Those aren't the same thing." "Why didn't you say something?" he asked. "At the wedding? Why didn't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you were?" I almost laughed. Almost. Because I was in the back row wearing a beige dress my mother picked out specifically to help me blend into the wallpaper. Because Vivian told me the wedding was about her and Graham, not about me. Because I just closed a Series B funding round for $20 million and I was still being treated like the family embarrassment who needed to stay quiet and not cause problems. So I stayed quiet. I smiled. I left early. I did exactly what was expected of me. I paused, then added with quiet precision, "And you still don't remember me." Which tells you everything you need to know about how my family positions me when you're around. Graham looked stricken. Celeste looked pale. Malcolm looked like a man who just realized he'd walked into a situation far more complex than a standard business negotiation. And honestly, good. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them sit with the realization that they'd participated in my erasure without even knowing it, that they'd absorbed my family's narrative about me without question, that they'd looked right past me because nobody had told them I was worth seeing. "But here's the thing," I said, and my tone shifted from personal to business because we'd spent enough time in the emotional swamp. "None of this changes the fundamentals of the proposal in front of you. Either our technology solves your supply chain problems or it doesn't. Either the ROI justifies the investment or it doesn't. Either you trust me to deliver on what I've promised or you don't. My family drama is irrelevant to those questions." Evan cleared his throat softly. "If I may," he said, and I appreciated him stepping in, giving me a brief reprieve from being the emotional lightning rod in the room. We've been in business for 6 years. We have 43 enterprise clients across 11 industries. Our retention rate is 97%. Our average client sees ROI within 14 months. Those metrics exist completely independent of Ms. Mercer's family situation. You can verify every claim we've made today. You can call our references. You can audit our financials. The business stands on its own. Malcolm nodded slowly, finally breaking eye contact with me to look down at the proposal packet. "You're right," he said. "You're absolutely right. This is a business decision, and I apologize for making it personal." "You made it personal the moment you asked if my family's rejection indicated something wrong with me," I replied, keeping my voice level. "But I understand the impulse. When someone's own parents exclude them, it's natural to wonder why. You just had the courage to ask the question most people only think. So let me answer it clearly. My parents excluded me because I make them uncomfortable. I'm successful in ways they don't know how to brag about at country club dinners. I'm unmarried in a social circle where that's seen as failure regardless of professional achievement. I prioritize work over family events, and they find that threatening. That's it. That's the whole story. There's no scandal, no instability, no hidden reason. Just a fundamental mismatch between who they wanted me to be and who I actually am." Priya spoke up for the first time since the personal revelations began. "For what it's worth," she said, her voice carrying that particular brand of loyalty that comes from working closely with someone for years. "I've worked with Nora for 4 years. I've seen her handle crises that would break most CEOs, product launches that failed, clients who threatened to sue, investors who pulled funding at the last minute. And every single time, she's been strategic, calm, and effective. Whatever her family thinks of her, the people who actually work with her know exactly who she is." Serena nodded. "Same. She's the best CEO I've ever worked for, and I've worked for 3. She's direct, she's fair, she makes hard decisions without hesitating, and she takes responsibility when things go wrong. I don't care if her parents invite her to Christmas or not. I care that she built a company that treats people well and produces technology that actually works." I felt something tighten in my throat. Not tears. I wasn't going to cry in this meeting, but gratitude. Because my team didn't have to do that. They didn't have to defend me. They could have stayed silent and let me handle it myself. But they chose to speak up, chose to validate me in front of people who'd question my worth, and that meant more than they could possibly know. Malcolm absorbed this, his expression thoughtful. Then he looked at Graham, who still seemed to be processing the fact that he'd been married to my sister for 8 months without knowing she had a sister successful enough to be featured on magazine covers. "Graham," Malcolm said quietly, "do you have any concerns about moving forward with this partnership?" It was a power move, putting the decision on his son, making Graham choose between his wife's family narrative and the business reality in front of him. Graham looked at me, really looked at me for the first time since he'd walked into the room. And I saw the moment he made his choice. "No," he said. "No concerns. If anything, I'm concerned that Vivian and her parents have been keeping this from me. That seems like a bigger issue than anything to do with the business proposal." Malcolm's eyebrows rose slightly. He hadn't expected that. Neither had I, honestly. But Graham continued, his voice gaining strength. "You're right. I don't remember you from the wedding. And that's not because you weren't memorable. It's because apparently my wife and her parents decided you weren't worth introducing. That's not acceptable. And it's certainly not something I want to perpetuate by declining this partnership based on some implied family concern that no one can actually articulate." He looked at his mother. "Did you know Vivian had a sister?" Celeste shook her head slowly. She mentioned siblings in passing, plural, but never with specifics. I assumed. I don't know what I assumed. Exactly, Graham said, and there was an edge to his voice now that suggested he was starting to get angry at my sister rather than uncomfortable about me. We all assumed. We filled in the blanks with whatever fit our expectations. And meanwhile, Vivian's sister is running a company that just demonstrated it can save us $17 million annually, and we walked past her magazine cover in the lobby without recognizing her because nobody bothered to tell us she existed. Malcolm was quiet for a long moment, watching this unfold. Then he did something I didn't expect. He stood up, walked around the table, and extended his hand to me again. Not for a handshake this time. For something more formal. More significant. Ms. Mercer, he said, I owe you an apology. Not for asking the question, I think that was fair due diligence under the circumstances, but for the assumption underlying it. For treating your family's judgment as more credible than your demonstrated competence. For participating, however unknowingly, in a dynamic that clearly caused you pain. I stood and took his hand. His grip was firmer this time, more intentional. I accept your apology, I said, and I appreciate the directness. We're signing today, Malcolm continued, still holding my hand, still holding my gaze. Not as an apology, not as charity, as a business decision. Because the proposal is sound, the technology works, and frankly, any CEO who can handle what just happened in this room with the level of professionalism you've shown is someone I want as a partner. He released my hand and turned to his executives. Draw up the contracts. Standard terms, 18-month initial commitment with renewal options. I want this in motion by end of quarter. The executives nodded and immediately started pulling out laptops and making notes. Just like that, the tone shifted from personal crisis to business execution. Because that's how Malcolm Caldwell operated. Make a decision, move forward, don't dwell. It's probably how he built a $3 billion company. Celeste stood as well, smoothing her skirt in that way women do when they're trying to regain composure. Nora, she said, and I could hear her working to find the right words. I'm sorry we didn't know about you. About what you've built. Vivian is. She's going to need to answer some questions when we get back. That's between you and her, I said neutrally. Because I didn't want to trash my sister to her in-laws, no matter how much she'd hurt me. Some lines you don't cross. But I appreciate the sentiment. We spent the next hour drilling through contract details, payment structures, performance milestones, integration timelines, termination clauses, intellectual property rights, all the tedious, essential infrastructure that turns a handshake agreement into a legally binding partnership. Evan and Priya handled most of the negotiation while I monitored, interjecting only when something needed clarification or adjustment. The Caldwell executives were thorough but fair. No attempts to slip in predatory terms or reduce our compensation. They negotiated like people who wanted a long-term partnership, not a short-term win. By noon, we had a framework everyone could agree to. Malcolm signed first, his signature bold and decisive. Then I signed, my hand steady, my name looking official and permanent on the dotted line. Just like that, it was done. A multi-million-dollar partnership with the family my parents had been so desperate to impress. Signed in my conference room. On my terms. Without my parents' help or approval or even knowledge. The Caldwell delegation started gathering their materials, preparing to leave. The executives were already on their phones, presumably calling their legal team to formalize everything we just agreed to. Celeste was quiet, processing. Malcolm was making notes, probably already thinking 3 moves ahead about how to announce this partnership to his board. But Graham lingered. He stood near the doorway, clearly wanting to say something but not sure how to start. I decided to make it easy for him. "Graham," I said, walking over, "you don't have to apologize for not knowing I existed. That wasn't your fault." "It feels like it should have been my responsibility," he said. "I married Vivian. I should have asked more questions about her family. I should have noticed that something was off when she barely talked about her sister." "Some people are very good at controlling narratives," I replied. "Vivian learned from the best. Our parents have been managing their image for decades. You couldn't have known what you weren't told." "Still," he said, and he looked genuinely troubled. "The fact that they uninvited you from Christmas so we wouldn't ask questions, that's not okay. That's not how family should work." I smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. "No, it's not. But it's how our family works. And honestly, Graham, I'm fine with it now. Because this," I gestured at the conference room, the signed contracts, the evidence of what I'd built. "This is what happens when you stop waiting for family approval and start building something worth approving." Graham nodded slowly, then said something that caught me completely off guard. "For what it's worth, you're invited to our Christmas dinner. My parents are hosting. No speeches, no pity, no performative family bonding. Just a seat at the table that's yours if you want it." I stared at him, genuinely surprised. Because that wasn't just an invitation. That was Graham choosing sides. That was him saying, in front of his mother and his father and his business partners, that I belonged at his family's table even if I didn't belong at my own. But the question was, did I want it? Did I want to sit at Christmas dinner with a family that had just signed a business deal with me, knowing my own family had excluded me specifically to avoid this exact scenario? I looked at Graham standing there in the doorway, offering me something my own parents had taken away, and I felt this strange mix of emotions I couldn't quite name. Gratitude, yes, but also wariness. Because pity invitations are worse than no invitation at all, and I needed to know if this was genuine or just guilt masquerading as kindness. "That's generous," I said carefully. "But you should talk to Vivian first. I'm not sure showing up at your family Christmas after signing a business deal with your parents is going to go over well with your wife." "Vivian doesn't get a vote on who my parents invite to their house," Graham said, and there was steel in his voice that hadn't been there before. "And frankly, after what I've learned today, I think Vivian and I need to have a very serious conversation about honesty and family and what she's been hiding from me." Malcolm walked over, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "What Graham is trying to say, perhaps inelegantly, is that the invitation stands regardless of family politics. You've demonstrated character today that frankly puts everyone else in this situation to shame, including us. We judged you by absence of information rather than presence of evidence. That was wrong. So if you want to come to Christmas dinner, you're welcome. No conditions. No expectations. Just an invitation." I studied Malcolm's face, looking for any sign that this was performative, that he was doing this because it looked good or because he felt obligated after signing a business deal or because he wanted to make a point to my parents about their judgment. But what I saw was something closer to genuine respect. The kind of respect that comes from watching someone handle an impossible situation with grace. "I appreciate that," I said slowly. "Can I think about it?" "Of course," Malcolm replied. "We're hosting on Christmas Eve. If you decide to come, just let Graham know. No RSVP required. No pressure either way. The offer is open." They left shortly after that. The executives first, already deep in conversation about implementation timelines. Then Celeste, who paused to squeeze my hand briefly, a gesture that felt more genuine than anything she'd said out loud. Then Malcolm and Graham together, father and son, already shifting back into business mode as they discussed next steps and board presentations and quarterly projections. And then it was just us. Me, Evan, Serena, and Priya, standing in the conference room that still smelled like expensive coffee and corporate ambition, looking at the signed contracts on the table like they might disappear if we stopped watching them. For about 5 seconds, nobody said anything. And then Serena let out this long, shaky breath and said, "Holy shit." "Yeah," I agreed. That was, Evan started, then stopped, shook his head, started again. That was the most intense business meeting I've ever been part of, and I once watched a client threaten to sue us mid-presentation. "You handled it perfectly," Priya said, and she was looking at me with this fierce pride that made my chest tight. "The way you just laid it all out, made them confront what they'd assumed. That was incredible." I thought I was going to have a heart attack when Malcolm asked if there was something wrong with your judgment, Serena admitted. I was literally calculating how fast I could get security up here if things went sideways. I laughed, and it came out shakier than I intended. Because now that the adrenaline was wearing off, I could feel everything I'd been holding back. The fear that they would judge me. The rage at my parents for putting me in this position. The vindication of watching the Caldwells realize they'd underestimated me. The bone-deep exhaustion of having to prove my worth to people who should have just seen it. "I need a minute," I said quietly, and walked to the window. The city stretched out below, midday sun glinting off glass towers, people moving through streets like blood cells through veins. Somewhere out there, my parents were probably planning their perfect Christmas dinner with the Caldwells, completely unaware that I'd just signed a major partnership with the family they'd excluded me to impress. Somewhere out there, Vivian was living her polished life, probably not even thinking about the sister she'd erased from her narrative. And here I was, standing in the company I'd built, holding a contract worth millions, feeling simultaneously triumphant and completely hollow. "You okay?" Evan asked quietly, coming to stand beside me. "I won't know until tomorrow," I admitted. "Right now, I'm just trying to process the fact that the last 2 hours actually happened." "For what it's worth," he said, "I'm really glad you didn't back down. When Malcolm asked that question about your family's concerns, I thought you might deflect or smooth it over. But you just went straight at it. Made him confront his own assumptions. That took guts." "It took rage," I corrected. "Guts would have been doing it because it was the right thing. I did it because I was angry." "Angry works too," Evan said with a slight smile. "Especially when it's righteous anger." Which that absolutely was. My phone buzzed. I didn't need to look to know it was Vivian. She had some kind of sixth sense for when I'd done something that affected her life. Sure enough, Vivian's name on the screen, followed by 3 texts in rapid succession. "Graham just called. What did you do? Why didn't you tell me you were meeting with his parents? We need to talk. Now." I stared at those messages, feeling absolutely nothing. No guilt. No anxiety. No urge to explain myself or defend my choices. Just a flat, calm certainty that I was done accommodating her comfort at the expense of my own dignity. I typed back, "I'm not your secret. We'll talk after the quarter closes." Then I muted the conversation and put my phone face down on the conference table. "Vivian," Priya guessed. "Yep. What did she say?" "That we need to talk now. I told her we'll talk after the quarter closes." Serena grinned. "That's such a power move. I love it." "It's not a power move," I said. "It's a boundary. I'm not dropping everything to manage her feelings about something she created. She made me invisible to her husband's family. She supported our parents, uninviting me from Christmas. She doesn't get to demand my immediate attention because the consequences of those choices are finally catching up with her." The phone buzzed again. And again. I didn't look. Evan picked it up, glanced at the screen, and raised his eyebrows. She's really insistent. 5 more texts. 2 missed calls. Let her be insistent, I said. I have work to do. And I meant it. Because here's what nobody tells you about standing up to family. It doesn't feel victorious, at least not right away. It feels terrifying and sad and like you're free-falling without a parachute. It feels like you've just burned down the only safety net you've ever known, even if that safety net was actually a trap. It feels like power and grief happening simultaneously in your chest until you can't tell which emotion is which. We spent the rest of the afternoon doing actual work, reviewing the Caldwell contract for any details we'd missed in the heat of the moment, planning the integration timeline, assigning team leads for different aspects of implementation, scheduling follow-up meetings, drafting the press release, all the mundane, necessary tasks that turn a signed contract into a functioning partnership. It felt good to focus on concrete problems with concrete solutions, to stop thinking about family dynamics and start thinking about API integrations and data migration protocols and project management workflows. By 6 p.m., the office was mostly empty. The rest of the team had gone home, exhausted from a Monday that had started as a standard client pitch and ended as whatever the hell that had been. But I stayed. I always stayed late. It's easier than going home to an empty apartment where the silence has too much space for thoughts I don't want to think. Evan knocked on my office door around 7. You planning to sleep here? Maybe, I said, not looking up from my laptop. Nora! His tone was gentle but firm. The tone that meant he was about to say something I wouldn't want to hear but needed to anyway. You just had one of the most emotionally intense experiences of your professional life. You're allowed to stop working and process it. I'm processing fine, I lied. No, you're avoiding, he corrected, walking in and sitting down across from my desk. Which I get. Avoidance is a valid coping mechanism. But at some point, you're going to have to actually feel what you're feeling instead of just executing your way past it. I closed my laptop with more force than necessary. And what exactly am I supposed to be feeling, Evan? Happy that I signed a great deal? Angry that my parents are terrible? Vindicated that the Caldwells recognized their mistake? Sad that my sister married into a family without telling them I existed? Because I'm feeling all of those things at once, and I don't know what to do with any of them. That sounds exhausting, he said quietly. It is. So maybe stop trying to organize your feelings into neat categories and just let yourself be a mess for a minute. Go home. Order something terrible for dinner. Watch a stupid movie. Cry if you need to. Scream into a pillow. Whatever you need to do to release the pressure valve before you explode. I wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him I was fine. I didn't need to process anything. I could just work through it like I worked through everything. But the truth was I was so tired I could barely see straight. And the thought of going home, of being alone with my thoughts, of confronting everything that had happened today without the armor of work to protect me, that was terrifying. What if I go home and fall apart? I asked quietly. Then you fall apart, Evan said simply. And then you get back up. Because that's what you do. You're the strongest person I know, Nora. But strength doesn't mean never breaking. It means knowing you can survive the breaking. I felt something crack in my chest. Not breaking, not yet. But fracturing. Like ice on a pond that's starting to give way. Okay, I whispered. Okay, I'll go home. He stood up, squeezed my shoulder briefly, and headed for the door. Then he paused and turned back. For what it's worth. What you did today. Making them see you, making them confront their own blindness. That was one of the bravest things I've ever watched someone do. And I'm really proud to work for you. Then he left before I could respond, which was probably good because I didn't trust my voice anymore. I packed up slowly, deliberately, giving myself time to rebuild the walls before I had to walk through the building and past security and into the world. Put the laptop in its bag. Straightened the papers on my desk. Turned off the lights. Locked the door. Took the elevator down, nodding at the night security guard who'd worked here long enough to know that me leaving at 7 meant something had gone wrong. The magazine cover was still there in the lobby. My face, confident and composed, staring out at anyone who walked through the doors. I stopped in front of it for a minute, looking at that version of myself, the successful CEO, the entrepreneur, the woman who'd built something from nothing. They still didn't recognize you, I said to the image, even with your face on the wall. But Malcolm had apologized. Graham had invited me to Christmas. The contract was signed. They'd seen me eventually, even if it took longer than it should have. I walked out into the December evening, cold air hitting my face like a slap. The city was alive with holiday lights and last-minute shoppers and people rushing to wherever they belonged. I pulled out my phone and finally looked at Vivian's messages. 14 texts now. 3 voicemails. Each one progressively more frantic. Nora, pick up. Why is Graham asking me why I never told him about you? Mom called. She's furious. What did you say to the Caldwells? You're being incredibly selfish right now. This is going to ruin my relationship with Graham's family. Can you at least have the decency to respond? I read through all of them, feeling that same flat calm I'd felt earlier. No guilt. No urge to fix it. Just a clear-eyed understanding that Vivian was upset because consequences had arrived, and she'd never learned to handle those. I typed one message. I didn't say anything to the Caldwells that wasn't true. If the truth is ruining your relationship with them, that's not my fault. It's yours. Then I turned off my phone completely. Not muted. Off. Because I deserved one night where I didn't have to manage anyone else's reaction to my existence. I went home to my empty apartment, ordered Thai food I didn't taste, and sat on my couch staring at the city lights until I finally let myself cry. Not because I was sad. Not because I regretted what I'd done. But because I'd spent my entire life trying to be good enough for people who were never going to choose me, and today I'd finally stopped trying. And that freedom hurt almost as much as the rejection had. But tomorrow, I'd wake up and sign off on the Caldwell integration plan. Tomorrow, I'd be the CEO again, strong and competent and in control. Tonight, I was just Nora, the daughter who wasn't invited to Christmas, the sister who'd been erased, the woman who'd finally decided that being seen by strangers mattered more than being invisible to family. And somehow, impossibly, that was enough. I woke up Tuesday morning with swollen eyes and a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The kind of clarity that comes after you've cried yourself empty and there's nothing left to hide from. My phone was still off. I turned it on while the coffee brewed, watching notification after notification flood the screen like a dam breaking. Vivian. 23 messages. Mom. 17 calls. 8 voicemails. Dad. 2 texts, which was actually more than he'd sent me in the past year combined. Even some cousins I barely talked to had weighed in, probably recruited by my mother to apply family pressure. I deleted everything without reading it. Not out of spite. Not even out of anger anymore. Just out of a simple recognition that nothing they had to say was going to change anything. They'd made their choice when they sent that first text uninviting me from Christmas. Everything that came after was just them being upset about the consequences. I got dressed, drank my coffee standing at the window watching the city wake up, and headed to the office an hour early. Because work was the one place where I knew exactly who I was and what I was worth. Where my value wasn't negotiable or conditional or dependent on fitting someone else's narrative. Evan was already there, which didn't surprise me. He had this sixth sense for when I needed someone in my corner without having to ask. "How'd you sleep?" he asked, handing me a second coffee, the good kind from the place 3 blocks over, not the office machine sludge. "Terribly," I admitted. But I cried for 2 hours, ate my weight in pad thai, and then slept like the dead. So overall, therapeutic disaster. He smiled. "Good. You needed that." "My phone exploded overnight," I said, showing him the notification count. 50+ messages from various family members, all presumably telling me I've ruined everything and need to fix it immediately. "Are you going to fix it?" "No." "Read the messages?" "Eventually, maybe." "Respond." "Only if someone says something that deserves a response," which based on the preview snippets I saw, seems unlikely. Evan nodded approvingly. "Cold. Efficient. Very CEO of you." "I learned from the best," I said, and we both knew I wasn't talking about my parents. The morning passed in a blur of productive work. We had a team meeting to discuss the Caldwell integration timeline, assigning roles and responsibilities, setting milestones and deadlines. Serena presented the technical architecture, Priya mapped the training schedule, Evan outlined the communication strategy. Everyone was energized, feeding off the momentum of landing such a significant client. Around 11, my assistant Sarah knocked on my office door with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You have a visitor," she said carefully. "Didn't have an appointment, but she says she's your sister and it's urgent." My stomach dropped. "Vivian. Here. At my office." Which she'd never visited before, not once in the 6 years since I'd founded the company. Not when we'd closed our Series A. Not when we'd hit our first million in revenue. Not when I'd been featured on that magazine cover in the lobby. But now, when she needed something from me, suddenly she knew where I worked. "Did you tell her I was available?" I asked. "I told her I'd check," Sarah said. "But between you and me, she's got that energy. Like she's going to wait in the lobby all day if necessary." I considered my options. I could refuse to see her, make her wait, force her to leave empty-handed. That would be the power move. The revenge play. But it would also mean this situation would fester, grow, metastasize into something bigger. And I didn't want that. I wanted to deal with Vivian directly, on my territory, in my space, where I had all the control. "Give me 5 minutes, then send her up," I said. Sarah nodded and disappeared. Evan looked at me questioningly. "Your sister." "Apparently." I'm guessing Graham told her about yesterday's meeting and she's here to do damage control. "You want me to stay?" he offered. "Witness protection, moral support, whatever you need." I considered it. Having Evan in the room would definitely make this easier, give me an ally, prevent Vivian from spinning the conversation into emotional manipulation. But it would also make this a performance instead of a reckoning. And I needed Vivian to see me, really see me, without an audience to play to. "No," I said. "This one I need to handle alone. But stay close in case it goes sideways." "I'll be right outside," he promised, and slipped out just as Sarah was escorting Vivian in. My sister looked perfect, because of course she did. Vivian always looked perfect. Camel-colored coat, designer bag, hair and makeup flawless despite the fact that it was 11 a.m. on a Tuesday and she'd presumably rushed over here in a panic. She had this gift for appearing effortlessly composed even when everything around her was chaos. It was both impressive and infuriating. Nora, she said, and her voice had that careful, measured quality that meant she'd rehearsed this conversation on the drive over. We need to talk. So I gathered, I replied, not standing up from my desk, not offering her a seat, making her ask for the basic courtesies she'd never extended to me. What can I do for you, Vivian? She blinked, clearly thrown by my tone. She'd expected tears, maybe, or anger, or the usual pattern where I'd eventually cave to keep the peace. She wasn't expecting cold professional detachment. Can I sit? She asked. If you want. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, the same chair Graham had sat in yesterday when his world was falling apart. She sat carefully, crossing her ankles in that finishing school way our mother had drilled into both of us. I'd unlearned it. Vivian never had. You met with Malcolm and Graham yesterday, she started. I did. It was a scheduled business meeting. We've been in talks with the Caldwell Group for 6 weeks. And you didn't think to mention that to me? That you were doing business with my husband's family? I leaned back in my chair, studying her. Why would I? You never mentioned Graham to me before the wedding invitation arrived. You certainly never mentioned that his father ran a company that might be a potential client. You kept your life separate from mine, Vivian. I was just following your lead. Her jaw tightened. That's not fair. No. I let the word hang there, sharp and cold. Which part isn't fair? The part where you never introduced me to your husband's family at your wedding? The part where you supported Mom and Dad uninviting me from Christmas so the Caldwells wouldn't have to know about me? Or the part where you're upset that the secret you tried to keep didn't stay kept? I didn't know they were going to uninvite you, Vivian said, and at least she had the decency to look uncomfortable. Mom just said it would be easier if it was immediate family only this year, and I thought, you thought that sounded reasonable, I finished for her. You thought it made sense to exclude me so you wouldn't have to explain me. You thought my absence would be easier than my presence. Don't lie to me now, Vivian. You don't get to rewrite history when the consequences show up. She flinched. Actually flinched. Like my words had physical weight. It wasn't like that, she said, but her voice was weaker now, less certain. Then what was it like? I challenged. Explain it to me. Make me understand how my own sister thought it was acceptable for our parents to uninvite me from Christmas and didn't once think to call me, text me, ask if I was okay with it. I didn't think you'd care that much, Vivian said quietly, and there it was. The truth underneath all the excuses. You're always so busy with work. You've missed Thanksgivings before, skipped family events. I thought you'd probably be relieved to have an excuse not to come. I felt something cold settle in my chest, because she genuinely believed that. She convinced herself that my absence didn't matter because I didn't prioritize family the way she did. She'd mistaken my independence for indifference. I skipped events when I had legitimate work conflicts, I said, keeping my voice level even though I wanted to scream. Product launches, client emergencies, investor meetings, things that couldn't be rescheduled. But I never chose work over family just because I didn't feel like showing up. And even when I missed events, I was still invited. I was still wanted. This was different, Vivian. This was Mom and Dad explicitly telling me I wasn't welcome at my own family's Christmas because my existence was too complicated to explain to your in-laws. They were trying to make things easier, Vivian protested weakly. For who? For you. For them. Because it certainly wasn't easier for me to receive that text. It wasn't easier to sit with the knowledge that my own parents thought I was an embarrassment. And it definitely wasn't easier to show up to a business meeting and discover that the people they were trying to protect their image around were the same people I was about to sign a multi-million-dollar deal with. Vivian's eyes widened. You signed a deal with them? Yesterday. Right after Graham recognized me from the wedding he claims I attended, but no one remembers seeing me at. Right after Malcolm asked if there was something wrong with my judgment that would explain why my family excluded me. Right after I had to explain to my potential business partners that my parents uninvited me from Christmas specifically because they didn't want to answer questions about who I am and what I do. She went pale. Nora, I didn't know. Of course you didn't know, I interrupted. Because you never asked. You never wondered what I was working on or who my clients were or whether there might be any overlap between my professional life and yours. You kept me in a separate box labeled difficult sister who works too much, and you never bothered to look inside that box to see what was actually there. That's not true, Vivian said, but there was no conviction in her voice. I'm proud of what you've built. I've always been proud. Have you? I challenged. Because you've never visited this office before today. You've never asked to see our product or meet my team or understand what my company actually does. You know I run a tech company, vaguely, abstractly, but you couldn't tell Malcolm Caldwell what kind of tech or why it matters or how it works. Because you've never cared enough to learn. I don't understand technology, she protested. You don't have to understand technology to show interest in your sister's life, I shot back. You could have asked questions. You could have let me explain it in simple terms. You could have at least pretended to care about the thing I've poured 6 years of my life into building. But you didn't. Because my success doesn't fit the narrative you and Mom and Dad prefer. The narrative where you're the successful daughter who married well, and I'm the workaholic who chose career over family. Vivian's composure was cracking now. I could see tears forming at the corners of her eyes, carefully controlled to avoid ruining her makeup. What do you want from me, Nora? An apology. Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't introduce you to Graham's family at the wedding. I'm sorry I didn't fight harder when Mom said you shouldn't come to Christmas. I'm sorry I didn't realize how much it would hurt you. What else do you want me to say? I don't want you to say anything, I replied quietly. I want you to actually mean it. I want you to understand that this isn't about one Christmas or one wedding. This is about a pattern that's been happening our entire lives. You've always been the daughter they're proud of in public. I've always been the daughter they tolerate in private. And you've benefited from that dynamic without ever questioning it. That's not. I never asked them to treat you differently, Vivian said. No, you just accepted it. Enjoyed it, even. Let them put you on a pedestal while I worked twice as hard for half the recognition. Never once said, hey, maybe we should acknowledge what Nora's accomplished. Maybe we should introduce her to important people. Maybe we should treat her like she matters. The tears spilled over now, running down Vivian's carefully made-up face in dark mascara tracks. I didn't know you felt that way, she whispered. How could you not know? I asked, and my own voice was rough now, emotion breaking through the professional detachment I'd been maintaining. How could you not see it? We grew up in the same house, with the same parents. You saw how they celebrated every single thing you did. Good grades, college acceptance, engagement, wedding, with parties and announcements and pride. And you saw how they treated my achievements like inconveniences. Like things to mention briefly and move past quickly because they didn't know how to brag about a daughter who founded a company instead of marrying into one. I thought you didn't care what they thought, Vivian said. I thought you were above all that. You always seemed so confident, so sure of yourself. Like you didn't need their approval. Of course I cared, I said, and the admission hurt coming out. I'm their daughter too. I wanted them to be proud of me. I wanted them to show off my accomplishments the way they showed off yours. But they didn't, so I learned to build my own validation. I learned to find worth in my work instead of in their approval. But that doesn't mean it didn't hurt. It just means I got good at hiding the hurt. Vivian was openly crying now, not caring about the mascara or the careful composure. I didn't know. I swear, Nora, I didn't know it was that bad. Then you weren't paying attention, I said. Because it's always been this bad. You just benefited from not seeing it. We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of 30 years of unspoken resentment filling my office like smoke. And then Vivian asked the question I'd been waiting for, the one that would determine whether this conversation could lead to actual change or just temporary peace. What do I need to do to fix this? I looked at my sister, polished, perfect, crying in my office because for the first time in her life, her carefully constructed narrative had collided with reality, and I realized something important. I didn't know if this could be fixed. I didn't even know if I wanted it to be. But I knew what I needed. And for once, I was going to ask for it. I looked at Vivian crying in that chair, mascara tracking down her face, designer coat still perfect, and I realized this was the first time I'd ever seen her without her armor. The first time she'd come to me vulnerable instead of composed. The first time she was asking me what I needed instead of assuming I'd adapt to what she wanted. And that mattered. It didn't fix everything, but it mattered. What do you need to do to fix this? I repeated her question slowly, letting it settle between us. Honestly, Vivian, I don't know if you can fix it. Not completely. Not quickly. Because this isn't about one apology or one conversation. This is about fundamentally changing how you see me, how you talk about me, how you position me in your life. And that's not something you can do with a grand gesture. It's something you have to do consistently, over time, when no one's watching. She wiped her eyes, smearing mascara across her wrist. Then tell me where to start. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my desk. Start by telling Graham the truth. All of it. Not just that you have a sister you didn't mention, but why you didn't mention me. What Mom and Dad's text actually said. How you reacted to it. What you've believed about me and why. No sanitizing. No making yourself look better. Just the truth. He's already upset with me, Vivian said quietly. He asked me last night why I never told him about you. Why he had to find out in a business meeting that his wife's sister runs a company successful enough to partner with his father's corporation. I didn't know what to say. So you said nothing? I said it was complicated. That we weren't close. That family dynamics were difficult. I shook my head. That's deflection, not truth. The truth is that you were embarrassed by me. Not because I did anything wrong, but because I don't fit the image you want to project. You want to be the daughter who made the perfect match, married into the right family, lives the polished life. Having a sister who chose business over marriage, who builds companies instead of families, who doesn't need a man to validate her success, that complicates your narrative. So you erased me from it. Vivian flinched again, but she didn't deny it. That was something, at least. Progress, maybe. I wasn't embarrassed by you, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. I don't know. Intimidated, maybe? You built something from nothing. You're on magazine covers. You employ dozens of people. And what have I done? Married well. That's it. That's my entire accomplishment. I married a man whose family already had money and success and connections. I didn't build anything. I just attached myself to something already built. That admission surprised me. I'd never heard Vivian express any kind of insecurity about her choices. She'd always seemed perfectly content with her life, with the role she'd chosen. Is that how you see yourself? I asked. Sometimes, she admitted. Especially when I'm around you. You're so certain about everything. You know what you want and you go after it and you don't apologize for it. And I've spent my whole life trying to be what other people want me to be. What Mom and Dad want. What Graham's family expects. What society says a successful woman should look like. I don't even know who I am outside of those expectations. We sat with that for a moment, and I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of understanding. Because I'd been so focused on how Vivian had hurt me that I'd never considered that she might be hurting too. That she might be trapped in her own way, just a different kind of trap than mine. Then maybe this is your chance to figure it out, I said quietly. To stop performing for everyone else and start being honest about who you are and what you want. Even if that honesty is uncomfortable. Even if it disappoints people. I don't know how to do that, Vivian whispered. Neither did I replied. But I learned. And it started with setting boundaries. With saying no to things that diminished me. With refusing to make myself smaller so other people could feel bigger. That's what I did yesterday in that meeting with Malcolm and Graham. I could have deflected, could have kept the personal stuff separate from the business. But I didn't. I put it all out there and made them deal with it. And you know what? They respected me for it. You're braver than I am, Vivian said. I'm not brave. I'm just tired of being invisible. I paused, then added, but here's what you can do, Vivian. Right now. Today. You can go home and tell Graham everything. Tell him why I wasn't at the family photos at your wedding. Tell him what Mom's text said about not wanting awkward questions. Tell him that you agreed with it because you didn't think it mattered. And then tell him you were wrong. That you see now how wrong you were. That's where you start. She nodded slowly, processing. And what about Mom and Dad? What about them? Are you going to talk to them? Tell them about the meeting? About the contract? I considered this. Part of me wanted to call them right now. Wanted to hear their reaction when they realized I'd signed a major partnership with the family they'd been so desperate to impress. Wanted to watch them scramble to explain why they'd uninvited me. Wanted the satisfaction of their discomfort. But another part of me, the part that was tired and sad and just wanted peace, didn't want to give them that power anymore. Eventually, I said. But not because I need their approval or their apology. Just because they should know that their attempts to hide me backfired spectacularly. That the Caldwells now know exactly who I am and what I've built. That I'm going to be working closely with Malcolm and his team for the next 18 months minimum. That they can't erase me from the narrative anymore, even if they want to. They're going to be upset, Vivian warned. Let them be upset, I said. I've spent 30 years managing their emotions, trying not to disappoint them, trying to be good enough in ways they could recognize and celebrate. I'm done. If they're upset that the truth came out, that's their problem to solve, not mine. Vivian wiped her eyes again, looking at me with something that might have been respect, or might have been fear, or might have been both. When did you get so strong? I've always been strong, I corrected gently. You just never noticed because strength doesn't look like what you were taught to recognize. You were taught that strength is endurance, is staying silent, is keeping the peace at any cost. But real strength is knowing when to break the peace, when to speak up, when to demand better. She absorbed that, nodding slowly. Then she asked, Graham invited you to their Christmas dinner, didn't he? His parents. He did. Malcolm too. They were very gracious about it. Are you going to go? I hesitated. Because truthfully, I didn't know. The invitation had felt genuine in the moment, But now I wondered if it had been guilt-driven, a way to make themselves feel better about not recognizing me. A performance of inclusivity that didn't actually cost them anything. I haven't decided, I admitted. Part of me wants to go just to prove I can. Just to show Mom and Dad that I have a seat at a table, even if it's not theirs. But another part of me thinks that accepting the invitation is letting the Caldwells off too easily. Making them feel like they've fixed something they didn't actually break. What if I want you there? Vivian asked quietly. What if I want the chance to introduce you properly this time? To tell Graham's family about what you do and why it matters and how proud I should have been all along. I studied her face, looking for signs of performance, of her saying what she thought I wanted to hear. But what I saw was genuine. Scared, uncertain, but genuine. Then I'll think about it, I said. But understand, Vivian, if I come, I'm not coming to make things comfortable for you. I'm not coming to smooth over the awkwardness or pretend the past didn't happen. If I come as myself. Fully. Completely. And if that makes people uncomfortable, so be it. I understand, she said. And honestly, I think I need to see that. I need to see what it looks like when you refuse to make yourself smaller. Because I've been making myself smaller my whole life, and I'm not sure I know how to stop. There was something raw in her voice that I recognized. The sound of someone realizing they've been living a lie and not knowing how to tell the truth. We'd grown up in the same house with the same parents, but we'd learned different survival strategies. Vivian learned to perform, to please, to become whatever people needed her to be. I learned to separate, to build walls, to find validation outside the family system. Neither strategy was healthy. Neither made us whole. But at least my strategy led to something I could point to and say, I built this. What did Vivian have? A marriage that was now strained because it was built on incomplete information. A relationship with parents who loved her performance but didn't know her person. A life that looked perfect from the outside but felt empty from the inside. You should go, I said, not unkindly. You need to talk to Graham. Really talk to him. And I have actual work to do. Integration plans, team meetings, all the things that happen after you sign a major contract. Vivian stood, gathering her bag, trying to compose herself. Thank you, she said. For what? For being honest. For not letting me off easy. For being strong enough that I might learn how to be strong too. I walked her to the door. Vivian, I said as she was about to leave. One more thing. She turned back. I meant what I said in my text. I'm not your secret anymore. If you want to rebuild our relationship, it starts with you being honest about me. To Graham, to his parents, to Mom and Dad, to everyone. I'm not going to hide who I am or what I do or how I've succeeded just to make other people comfortable. Not anymore. Not ever again. I understand, she said. And then, quietly, I'm sorry it took me this long to see you. Yeah, I replied. Me too. She left, and I stood in my office doorway watching her walk through the space I'd built, past the teams I'd hired, past the magazine cover in the reception area that proved I'd made something of myself despite my family's indifference. Evan appeared beside me. How'd it go? Honestly, I'm not sure. She apologized. She cried. She admitted things I didn't expect her to admit. Whether any of it leads to actual change remains to be seen. Are you okay? He asked. I will be, I said. And I meant it. Because here's what I'd learned in the past 48 hours. I didn't need my family's approval to be successful. I didn't need my parents' pride to know my worth. I didn't need my sister's acknowledgement to validate my choices. What I needed was to build something so undeniable that even people who wanted to ignore me couldn't. And I'd done that. I'd built a company worth millions. I'd signed a partnership with one of the most respected firms in the industry. I'd forced my family's carefully constructed narrative to collide with reality, and reality won. The rest of Tuesday passed in a blur of productivity. We finalized the integration timeline with the Caldwell team, set up communication protocols, assigned project leads, scheduled the first round of meetings. Everything moving forward with the efficient momentum of a well-executed plan. I left the office at a reasonable hour for once, went home, and actually cooked myself dinner instead of ordering takeout. Small acts of self-care that felt revolutionary after years of treating myself like a machine that only needed fuel and maintenance. Around 9 p.m., my phone rang. Dad's number. I stared at it for a long moment, debating whether to answer. But curiosity won out. "Hello, Dad." "Nora." His voice was tight, controlled, angry in that careful way he got when he was furious but trying to maintain composure. "Your mother and I need to talk to you about your meeting with the Caldwells." "What about it?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "You ambushed them with personal information that had nothing to do with business. You made your mother and me look bad in front of people we're trying to build a relationship with. You sabotaged us." I felt a laugh building in my chest, sharp and bitter. "I sabotaged you?" "Dad, I signed a multi-million-dollar partnership with them. I demonstrated that our company can save them $17 million annually. I proved that I'm competent, professional, and exactly the kind of partner they want to work with. The only thing I sabotaged was your narrative that I'm someone to be hidden." "You told them we uninvited you from Christmas," he said, and his voice cracked slightly on the last word. "You made it sound like we were ashamed of you." "Weren't you?" I challenged. "Mom's text literally said you didn't want awkward questions about my situation. That you thought it would be better if I sat this one out. How exactly am I supposed to interpret that except as shame?" "It wasn't. We were trying to make things easier for everyone. The Caldwells are important people, Nora. We wanted the evening to go smoothly. And my presence would have disrupted that smoothness," I finished. "Because explaining who I am and what I do was too complicated. Too risky. Too likely to produce questions you didn't want to answer. I understand the logic, Dad. I just refuse to accept that my absence is preferable to my presence in my own family." There was a long silence on the other end. Then, "Malcolm called us this afternoon. Told us about the partnership. Told us about what happened in the meeting. He was very complimentary of you. Said you handled a difficult situation with remarkable professionalism." "And that surprises you?" "No." "Yes. I don't know." Dad sounded exhausted. "I knew you were successful, Nora. I knew you'd built something. But I didn't realize, I didn't understand the scale of it. The importance of it. Malcolm called you one of the sharpest minds he's encountered in decades. He said your company is going to transform how they operate. And yet you didn't think I was important enough to invite to Christmas," I said quietly. "You knew I was successful, but you still decided my success wasn't the right kind. Wasn't compatible with the image you wanted to project. So you erased me." "We didn't erase you," Dad protested weakly. "We just thought." "You thought wrong," I interrupted. "And now you're upset because the consequences of that wrong thinking are embarrassing you in front of the people you were trying to impress. But here's the thing, Dad. I don't care. I don't care if you're embarrassed. I don't care if this is uncomfortable for you. I spent 30 years being uncomfortable so you and Mom could maintain your preferred narrative about our family. I'm done with that. What do you want from us? He asked, and he sounded genuinely lost. Like he couldn't comprehend that his daughter might not need his approval anymore. Nothing, I said, and the word felt like freedom. I don't want anything from you. I don't need your approval or your pride or your acknowledgement. It would be nice to have those things. It would have been nice to have them my whole life, but I've learned to live without them. I've learned to build my own validation. So if you want to repair our relationship, that's going to require you to actually see me, actually value me, actually treat me like I matter. And I'm not sure you're capable of that. The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. I could hear my father breathing, could imagine him standing in whatever room he'd retreated to for this call, realizing that his youngest daughter had just told him she didn't need him anymore. And the worst part? It was true. I didn't. For the first time in my life, I genuinely didn't need my parents' approval. And that terrified him far more than my anger ever could. Finally, Dad spoke, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. Your mother wants to talk to you. Will you at least hear her out? I closed my eyes, steeling myself for whatever came next. Because if my father's guilt was hard to handle, my mother's manipulation was going to be devastating. I heard the phone being passed, a muffled conversation in the background, and then my mother's voice, crisp, controlled, but with an edge I'd never heard before. Not anger exactly. Something closer to panic, barely contained beneath years of practiced composure. Nora, she said, and I could hear her trying to calibrate her tone, trying to find the right approach that would get me back in line. Your father tells me you don't want anything from us. That you don't need our approval anymore. Is that really how you feel? Yes, I said simply. No elaboration. No softening. Just the truth. Well, that's very dramatic, Mom replied, and there was the condescension I'd been expecting. The dismissiveness that had characterized every conversation where I didn't perform the way she wanted. You're upset about Christmas, I understand. But you're taking this too far. Making a scene in a business meeting with the Caldwells, telling them private family matters. That's not how we handle things, Nora. How do we handle things, Mom? I asked, and my voice was dangerously calm. We handle things by pretending I don't exist when it's convenient, by uninviting me from family events when my presence might complicate your social positioning, by treating my success as something embarrassing instead of something to celebrate. Is that the family protocol I'm supposed to follow? That's not fair, she said, and I could hear the offense in her voice. The genuine belief that she'd done nothing wrong. We've always supported you. No, you haven't, I corrected. You've tolerated me. There's a difference. You tolerated my choices as long as they didn't interfere with your plans. You tolerated my career as long as I kept it separate from family events. You tolerated my success as long as I didn't expect you to acknowledge it publicly. But support, actual support, that requires showing up. That requires being proud. That requires telling people about your daughter's accomplishments instead of hiding them. We are proud of you, Mom insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. Are you? Then why didn't you hang my magazine cover in your house? Why didn't you mention my company to the Caldwells when you knew they were in the same industry? Why didn't you defend me when you decided to uninvite me from Christmas? If you're proud of me, Mom, you have a really strange way of showing it. There was a pause. Then, you don't understand the position we were in. The Caldwells are important connections. Graham's family moves in circles that could benefit your father's business, that could help Vivian socially. We couldn't risk. We needed to make a good impression. And I would have ruined that impression. I finished for her. My existence, my choices, my success, all of it was too risky to present to people you wanted to impress. So you erased me. You literally sent me a text message uninviting me from my own family's Christmas because explaining me was too complicated. It wasn't about erasing you, Mom said, and now she sounded defensive. It was about managing a delicate situation. The Caldwells have traditional values. They come from old money. They have expectations about what successful families look like, and you wanted to fit their expectations, I interrupted. You wanted to present a family that looked a certain way. Vivian, the perfect daughter who married well. You and Dad, the proud parents of a socially appropriate success story. And me. I didn't fit that story. So you edited me out. You make it sound so calculated, Mom protested. It wasn't like that. We were just trying to avoid awkward questions. About my situation, I quoted back to her. That's what you called it in your text. My situation. Like I'm a problem that needs managing instead of a daughter who deserves respect. Do you have any idea how that felt? To be reduced to a situation by my own mother. I could hear her breathing on the other end, could imagine her in their living room, probably pacing, probably furious that I wasn't backing down the way I usually did. Because that's how this normally worked. She'd express disappointment, I'd feel guilty, I'd apologize for making things difficult, and we'd return to the status quo where I stayed in my lane and didn't cause problems. But I wasn't apologizing this time. I wasn't backing down. I was done playing by rules that were designed to keep me small. Malcolm called us today, Mom said, changing tactics. He told us about the partnership, about what you said in the meeting. Nora, you made us look terrible in front of them. You told them we uninvited you from Christmas. You made it sound like we're bad parents. I told them the truth, I replied. If the truth makes you look bad, that's not my fault. That's yours. You could have handled it differently. You could have kept the personal separate from the business. I could have protected your image at the expense of my dignity, I finished. I could have let them continue thinking I didn't exist or didn't matter. I could have signed a multi-million-dollar partnership with people who married into our family without ever knowing I existed. But I didn't. Because I'm done protecting your narrative when it requires erasing mine. This is exactly why we didn't invite you to Christmas, Mom said, and her voice was sharp now, cutting. This kind of behavior, this selfishness, this inability to consider how your actions affect other people. You've always been like this, Nora. Always putting yourself first. Always making everything about you. The accusation hung in the air like poison, and I felt something break inside me, not the kind of breaking that makes you weak, but the kind that makes you free. Because in that moment, I realized my mother genuinely believed what she was saying. She genuinely thought I was selfish for refusing to disappear. She genuinely thought I was making everything about me by asking to be seen. And there was no reasoning with that. There was no conversation that would make her understand that asking for basic recognition isn't selfish, it's human. You're right, I said quietly. I am putting myself first. For the first time in 30 years, I'm prioritizing my own worth over your comfort. I'm refusing to shrink so you can expand. I'm choosing my dignity over your image. And if that makes me selfish in your eyes, then I'll be selfish. Because the alternative is being invisible, and I'm done with that. Don't be ridiculous, Mom said, and I could hear the panic creeping into her voice now. The realization that her usual tactics weren't working. You're not invisible. You're being dramatic. We've always loved you, always supported you. This is just you being oversensitive about a simple decision to keep Christmas small this year. Then uninvite Vivian too, I challenged. If it was really about keeping it small, about immediate family only, then why was Vivian invited? Why were Graham and his parents invited? The only person who got edited out was me. The only person deemed too complicated was me. So don't tell me this was about keeping it small. This was about keeping it acceptable. And I'm not acceptable to you. There was silence. Long, awful silence that confirmed everything I just said. Nora, Mom finally said, and her voice had shifted to something that sounded almost like pleading. What do you want us to do? You can't just throw away 30 years of family over one Christmas invitation. I'm not throwing anything away, I said. I'm just refusing to carry something that's been weighing me down my whole life. The weight of your disappointment. The weight of never being enough. The weight of watching you celebrate Vivian's accomplishments while treating mine like inconveniences. I'm setting that weight down, Mom. And if that means our relationship changes or ends or becomes something unrecognizable, so be it. But I'm not picking it back up. You sound like you've made up your mind, she said, and there was something bitter in her tone. Like you've decided we're terrible parents and there's nothing we can say to change that. I haven't decided you're terrible parents, I corrected. I've decided that you're parents who love the idea of me more than the reality of me. Who love the version of me that fits your expectations but can't handle the version who built something outside your understanding. And I've decided that I can't keep trying to be the daughter you want when it requires abandoning the person I actually am. That's not. We never asked you to abandon yourself, Mom protested weakly. Yes, you did, I said. Every time you changed the subject when I talked about my work. Every time you introduced Vivian's accomplishments at family gatherings but not mine. Every time you suggested I should focus on finding a husband instead of building a company. Every time you sighed when I missed a family event because of work. Every single one of those moments was you asking me to abandon the parts of myself that didn't fit your preferred narrative. And I did it for years, Mom. I tried to be what you wanted, but it was never enough. So I stopped trying. I could hear her breathing, shallow and fast, the sound of someone realizing they're losing an argument they didn't know they were having. Malcolm invited me to their Christmas dinner, I said, breaking the silence. Him and Graham both. They want me there. They think I belong at their table, even if I don't belong at yours. You can't be serious, Mom said, and now she sounded genuinely shocked. You're actually considering going to the Caldwell's Christmas instead of ours? After everything, after you uninvited me? I finished. Yes, Mom. I'm considering it. Because at least they had the decency to recognize they'd overlooked me and try to correct it. You still haven't even apologized. I shouldn't have to apologize for making a reasonable decision about a family event, she said, and her voice was defensive again, angry. You're twisting this into something it wasn't, making us out to be villains when all we did was try to navigate a complicated social situation. Then we're at an impasse, I said, because I see it as you choosing your image over your daughter, and you see it as a reasonable social decision. And I'm not interested in debating which interpretation is correct. I know what your text said. I know how it made me feel. And I know that when given the choice between defending me and protecting your relationship with the Caldwells, you chose them. That tells me everything I need to know. This is absurd, Mom said, and her voice was sharp with frustration now. You're going to ruin our family over this? Over one Christmas? Over one text message? I'm not ruining anything, I replied. I'm just refusing to rebuild something that was broken from the beginning. Our family has always had a Vivian-shaped hole at the center where I was supposed to fit. I tried for 30 years to squeeze myself into that space. I'm done trying. If you want a relationship with me going forward, it's going to have to be built on who I actually am, not who you wish I was. And if we can't do that? Mom asked quietly, and there was something almost like grief in her voice. Then I guess we don't have a relationship, I said, and the words hurt coming out but felt necessary. True. Like lancing a wound that had been infected for years. I love you, Mom. But I can't keep sacrificing my worth for your comfort. I can't keep being invisible so you can maintain your preferred version of our family. I just can't. There was a long pause. Then Mom said, in a voice I barely recognized, I need to think about this. Your father and I need to discuss what this means. What you're asking for. I'm not asking for anything, I said gently. I'm telling you what I need. There's a difference. You can meet those needs or not. But either way, I'm moving forward. With or without your approval. I see, she said, and the coldness in her voice was like ice water. Well then, I suppose there's nothing more to say right now. I suppose not, I agreed. Goodbye, Mom. I hung up before she could respond, before I could hear whatever cutting remark she had prepared, before I could second-guess myself and apologize and fall back into old patterns. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. But I felt lighter than I had in years. Because I'd finally said everything I'd been holding back for 3 decades. I'd finally drawn a line and refused to cross it. The apartment was quiet around me. Just me and the city lights and the weight of what I'd just done. I'd essentially told my parents that our relationship was conditional on them actually seeing me, actually valuing me, actually treating me like I mattered. And I had no idea if they were capable of that. No idea if they'd choose to meet me where I was, or if they'd decide I wasn't worth the effort. But for the first time in my life, I was okay with not knowing. Because I'd finally chosen myself. I'd finally decided that my worth wasn't dependent on their approval. That I could build a life, a career, a legacy that mattered regardless of whether they acknowledged it. My phone buzzed. A text from Evan. You okay? Felt the disturbance in the force from here. I smiled despite everything. Just had the conversation with my parents. It went exactly as badly as expected. Need anything? No. Just needed to do it. To say what I've been not saying for 30 years. Proud of you, he wrote back. That takes guts. Or stupidity. Haven't decided which yet. Why not both? I laughed, set the phone down, and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, my parents were probably having their own conversation. Probably discussing how ungrateful I was, how dramatic, how selfish. Probably reinforcing each other's belief that they'd done nothing wrong. And somewhere else, Vivian was hopefully having an honest conversation with Graham. Telling him the truth about our family, about how I'd been positioned, about what she'd let happen. Somewhere else, Malcolm and Celeste and Graham were probably processing what they'd learned in that meeting, recalibrating their understanding of the family they'd married into. And here I was, alone in my apartment, having just blown up the only family structure I'd ever known, not sure if I'd done the right thing, but knowing I'd done the only thing I could live with. I pulled out my laptop and started drafting an email to Malcolm. Professional, brief, confirming the integration timeline and next steps. Because regardless of what was happening with my family, the business moved forward. The work continued. The partnership I'd signed mattered. And I was going to make sure it succeeded, not to prove anything to my parents, but to prove something to myself. That I could build something valuable. That I could be worth knowing. That I could matter, with or without a family that acknowledged it. 3 days later, on Friday afternoon, something happened that I wasn't expecting. My assistant Sarah knocked on my door with that same careful expression she'd had when Vivian showed up unannounced. You have another visitor, she said. And before you ask, no appointment, claims it's personal, and I have a feeling you're going to want to take this one. I looked up from my laptop.
Who is it?
Sarah smiled slightly. Malcolm Caldwell. And he's not here for business. I stared at Sarah, trying to process what she'd just said. Malcolm Caldwell was here. In my building. Asking to see me. Not for a business meeting. We had those scheduled through proper channels with agendas and preparation time. This was personal, which meant this was about the family situation, about Christmas, about everything that had exploded in that conference room earlier in the week. Did he say what he wants? I asked. Just that he'd appreciate a few minutes of your time if you're available. He was very polite about it, but also very insistent in that way powerful people are when they're used to getting what they want. I considered sending him away. Considered saying I was busy, unavailable, not interested in mixing personal drama with business relationships. But curiosity won out. And honestly, respect too. Because Malcolm didn't have to come here. He could have called, emailed, sent a message through Graham. The fact that he'd shown up in person meant something. Send him up, I said. Give me 2 minutes first. Sarah nodded and disappeared. I stood, straightened my blazer, checked my reflection in the window. I looked tired. The past few days had been exhausting. The emotional confrontation with Vivian, the brutal honesty with my parents, the constant effort of maintaining professional composure while my personal life imploded. But I also looked strong, clear-eyed, like someone who'd finally stopped apologizing for taking up space. Malcolm appeared in my doorway exactly 2 minutes later, and he looked different than he had in the business meeting. Less CEO, more human. He wore a casual sweater instead of a suit, and his expression was softer, almost uncertain. Like he wasn't sure how this conversation was going to go. Mr. Caldwell, I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. This is unexpected. Malcolm, please, he corrected, sitting down. And I apologize for showing up unannounced. But I wanted to talk to you in person, and I wasn't sure you'd agree to meet if I called first. You're probably right, I admitted. The past few days have been complicated enough without adding more family drama to the mix. That's actually why I'm here, Malcolm said. I spoke with your parents yesterday. Your father called me, ostensibly to discuss the partnership details, but really to try to do damage control about what happened in our meeting. To explain their side of things. To make sure I understood that you were being unreasonable. I felt my jaw tighten. Of course he did. He told me that you'd always been difficult, Malcolm continued, and I could hear the careful neutrality in his voice, like he was testing how I'd react. That you prioritize work over family. That you took a simple decision about Christmas and turned it into a referendum on their entire parenting. That they've always supported you, but you refuse to acknowledge it. That you're being dramatic and oversensitive and making their lives unnecessarily complicated. The words landed like stones, each one a familiar weight I'd been carrying for years. This was the narrative my parents told about me. The story they used to explain away my anger, my hurt, my refusal to accept being erased. I was the problem. I was difficult. I was the one making everything complicated by refusing to just go along with their plans. And what did you say? I asked quietly. Malcolm leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. I told him that I'd watched you handle one of the most emotionally fraught situations I'd ever witnessed in a business context with more grace and professionalism than most executives could manage. That you'd been transparent about a personal situation that would have been easier to hide. That you'd demonstrated both vulnerability and strength in the same conversation, which is extraordinarily rare. And that based on everything I'd seen, the problem wasn't that you were difficult, It was that they didn't know how to appreciate you. I felt something catch in my throat. I hadn't expected that. Hadn't expected Malcolm to defend me to my own parents. How did he respond? He didn't like it, Malcolm said with a slight smile. He got defensive. Told me I didn't understand the full context, that there were years of history I wasn't aware of, that I shouldn't judge their parenting based on one incident. And I told him he was right. I didn't know the full history. But I knew what I'd seen. And what I'd seen was a daughter who'd built something remarkable being treated like an embarrassment by the people who should have been proudest of her. I had to look away, blinking hard against the tears that were threatening, because this was what I'd needed to hear. Not from my parents, they'd proven they couldn't give me this. But from someone. From anyone. Validation that I wasn't crazy, wasn't oversensitive, wasn't making something out of nothing. Thank you, I managed. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, Malcolm replied. Because your father was essentially asking me to participate in the same pattern that led to this situation in the first place. He wanted me to agree that you were the problem, to validate their decision to exclude you, to help them maintain their narrative. And I refused to do that. Not when the evidence so clearly contradicts it. He paused, then added, I also spoke with Graham. Had a long conversation with him about what Vivian told him after your meeting with her. About how she'd positioned you in their relationship, or rather, how she hadn't positioned you at all. About the dynamics in your family that led to you being invisible at their wedding.
How is he handling all of this?
I asked. Angry. Confused. Feeling betrayed, honestly. He married your sister believing she was honest with him about her life, her family, her history. Finding out that she essentially erased her own sister from her narrative because it was easier than explaining you, that's shaken his trust in fundamental ways. I felt a complicated mix of emotions about that. I didn't want Vivian's marriage to fall apart, but I also couldn't deny a certain satisfaction that the truth was finally forcing consequences. Is he going to leave her? I don't think so, Malcolm said. But I think their marriage is going to look very different going forward. Graham told Vivian that he needs her to be honest, actually honest, about who she is and what she wants and why she makes the choices she makes. No more performing. No more hiding parts of herself or her family because they don't fit the image she wants to project. He said if they're going to make it work, it has to be based on truth, not carefully managed appearances. That's good, I said quietly. That's what she needs. Someone who won't let her hide. He also said, Malcolm continued, that he wants to get to know you. The real you, not the sanitized version your family tried to present. He wants to understand what you do, why it matters, what drives you. He feels like he missed out on knowing his wife's sister for 8 months because nobody bothered to introduce you properly. And he wants to correct that. I nodded, absorbing this. I'd be open to that. When the dust settles. Which brings me to the real reason I'm here, Malcolm said, shifting his tone slightly. The Christmas invitation. I want you to know it stands, and it's genuine. Not guilt-driven. Not performative. We want you there because we want to know you. Because you've already proven you're worth knowing. I looked at him carefully, searching for any sign of obligation or pity. You don't have to do this. I signed a business partnership with you. That doesn't entitle me to a seat at your family's Christmas table. No, it doesn't, Malcolm agreed. But the fact that you're a remarkable person who's been systematically undervalued by the people who should value you most, that does. My family has a tradition of including people who need a place to belong during the holidays. We've had colleagues going through divorces, employees whose families lived across the country, friends who'd lost loved ones and couldn't face an empty house. Our table has always been open to people who needed it. And this year, you need it. I don't need pity, I said, and my voice came out sharper than I intended.
I'm fine being alone.
I'm sure you are, Malcolm said. You've probably been alone in the ways that matter for most of your life, even when you were surrounded by family. But there's a difference between being fine with being alone and actually wanting to be alone. And I suspect you don't want to spend Christmas by yourself, stewing in anger and hurt, while your parents celebrate without you and convince themselves they did nothing wrong. He was right. I hated that he was right. Because the truth was I didn't want to be alone on Christmas. I wanted to be somewhere I was wanted. Somewhere I was seen. Somewhere my presence mattered. What about Vivian? I asked. Will she be there? Yes, Malcolm said. We invited her and Graham before any of this happened. But understand, you're not being invited as Vivian's sister. You're being invited as Nora Mercer, CEO, partner, person worth knowing in your own right. Whatever happens between you and Vivian at dinner is secondary to the fact that you belong there on your own merit. I sat with that for a moment, trying to imagine walking into the Caldwell family Christmas, seeing Vivian across the table, having to navigate the awkwardness and the tension and the unresolved hurt, but also imagining being somewhere I was actually wanted, being introduced as myself, not as someone's sister, being asked about my work, my life, my thoughts, being seen. Okay, I said finally, I'll come. But I need you to understand something. I'm not coming to make peace with Vivian. I'm not coming to prove anything to my parents. I'm coming because you've offered me something my own family couldn't, basic recognition and respect. And I'm grateful for that. That's all I'm asking, Malcolm said. Just show up. Be yourself. The rest will work itself out. He stood, preparing to leave, but paused at the door. One more thing. I talked to Celeste, my wife, about everything. About what happened in the meeting, about your family dynamics, about why we didn't remember you from the wedding.
And she wanted me to tell you something.
What's that? I asked. She said she spent 30 years in social circles where women are valued for who they marry rather than what they build, where success is measured by your husband's achievements rather than your own, where being seen means being decorative rather than substantial. And she said watching you refuse to accept that framework, watching you build something meaningful on your own terms and refuse to apologize for it, she found that inspiring. She wanted you to know that you're exactly the kind of woman she wishes she'd had the courage to be. I felt tears spring to my eyes, unexpected and sharp. Tell her thank you.
And tell her it's never too late to become that woman.
Malcolm smiled. I will. See you Christmas Eve, Nora. 6 o'clock. And don't bring anything. Just yourself.
That's more than enough.
He left, and I sat in my office for a long time after, watching the afternoon light shift across the city. In 1 week, my entire world had transformed. I'd signed a major partnership. I'd confronted my sister. I'd drawn a line with my parents that might never be uncrossed. I'd been invited to Christmas by people who barely knew me but valued me more than my own family did. And I'd finally stopped apologizing for being exactly who I was. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I opened it, curious. Hi Nora, this is Graham. Got your number from Evan. Hope that's okay. I wanted to reach out before Christmas. I know things are complicated between you and Vivian, but I want you to know that I see you now. I see what you've built and who you are and what my family missed by not knowing you. I'm sorry it took this long. Looking forward to actually getting to know my sister-in-law. See you Christmas Eve. I read it 3 times, feeling something warm and unexpected in my chest. Hope, maybe. Or just the recognition that not everyone in this mess was determined to make me the villain. I texted back, "Thanks, Graham. I appreciate that. See you soon." Then I opened a new message to Evan, "So I'm going to the Caldwell's Christmas dinner." His response came back immediately, "Hell yes. That's the most badass power move I've ever heard of. Your parents are going to lose their minds." "Probably," I wrote back. "But that's their problem, not mine. I'm done managing their emotions." "Good. You deserve a Christmas where people are actually happy you showed up." He was right. I did deserve that. For the first time in 30 years, I was going to have a Christmas where my presence was welcomed rather than tolerated, where I didn't have to shrink myself to fit someone else's expectations, where I could just be Nora, complicated, successful, imperfect, real. The rest of the week passed quickly. Integration meetings with the Caldwell team, strategy sessions with my own people, press releases and investor updates, and all the machinery of business moving forward. I worked late every night, but not because I was avoiding anything, because I genuinely loved what I did. Because building this company, leading this team, solving these problems, that was where I found meaning. That was where I belonged. On Christmas Eve morning, I woke up early and went for a run through the empty city streets. The sun was just rising, painting everything gold and pink, and the air was sharp and cold and clean. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs ached and my mind was finally quiet. Then I went home, showered, and started getting ready for dinner. I chose my outfit carefully, not the beige dress my mother would have picked, designed to help me disappear. A deep emerald dress that made me look powerful and confident and completely myself. Statement earrings. Minimal makeup. Hair down instead of pinned back. I looked in the mirror and saw someone I recognized. Someone I'd worked hard to become. Someone I was proud to be. At 5:30, I called a car. The drive to the Caldwell house took 40 minutes through holiday traffic, giving me plenty of time to second-guess this decision approximately 16 times. What if it was awkward? What if Vivian made a scene? What if my parents found out and this became the final straw? What if I didn't belong there any more than I belonged at my own family's table? But then I remembered Malcolm's words. You're being invited as Nora Mercer, CEO, partner, person worth knowing in your own right. I was worth knowing. I was worth celebrating. I was worth the space I took up. The car pulled up to a house that looked like something from a movie, all stone and warm light and wreaths on every window. I could see people moving inside, hear laughter and music drifting out into the cold night. For a moment, I almost told the driver to turn around. Almost retreated to the safety of my apartment and my solitude and my certainty that I didn't need anyone. But I'd spent 30 years retreating. 30 years making myself smaller. 30 years accepting invisibility because visibility was too risky. I was done with that. I got out of the car, walked up the steps, and rang the doorbell. The door opened, and Malcolm stood there with a genuine smile, already reaching for my coat. "Nora, I'm so glad you came. Come in, come in. Let me introduce you to everyone." And just like that, I stepped into a Christmas that was mine. Not because I'd married into it or been born into it, but because I'd earned it simply by being myself. By refusing to hide. By building something worth noticing and refusing to apologize for it. This was the ending I deserved. Not reconciliation with parents who couldn't see me. Not forgiveness from a sister who'd erased me. But recognition from people who'd learned to value me. And that, finally, impossibly, was enough. So here's my question for you. When is enough actually enough? When do you stop waiting for your family to choose you and start choosing yourself? Drop a comment and tell me your story. Have you ever been the daughter who wasn't invited to Christmas? The sibling who didn't fit the family narrative? The person who built something amazing while your family acted like it didn't matter? Because I guarantee you're not alone. There are thousands of us out here, walking away from families who couldn't appreciate us, building lives that matter on our own terms, finally learning that self-worth doesn't require anyone else's approval. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to outgrow your family's expectations, that it's okay to demand better, that it's okay to be successful in ways they don't understand and refuse to apologize for it. And if you want to see what happened next, because trust me, this story doesn't end at Christmas dinner, hit subscribe. Because the fallout from showing up to the Caldwell's Christmas? When my parents found out where I spent the holiday. When Vivian and I finally had the conversation we'd been avoiding for 30 years. That's a whole other chapter. And honestly, it gets even more intense from here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for seeing me. And remember, you don't need permission to take up space. You just need the courage to do it anyway.